Welcome to the Circus of Fools, episode 5, the I5 podcast series covering the election, and this will be the last episode before the actual polling takes place because we have some personal circumstances to deal with, both of us. I'm Jonathan, here with my co host Jim.
Hello.
And this is going to be a pretty short one because while there's been scandals like the betting scandal with Rishi Sunak, where some of his aides and friends have been making bets effectively, made bets on when the election was, it seems there's always a scandal in the media for the Tories. So it does seem like the whole media have turned on the Tories, but we're going to be discussing in this one what we think is going to happen in the election and what we think needs to be taken into account. So, baseline, Jim, who do you think is going to win the election, first of all?
The way it's looking right now, I think Labour will win,
Hmm.
and then Reform will take a little bit more seats than predicted,
Hmm.
and the Tories will finish last, but they will not be completely out of the parliament because the way
Hmm.
the system works now, it sort of protects them in a sense.
Yeah,
So they
I
will gain
suppose.
some seats, but they're going to be significantly fewer than they would
Hmm.
expect.
I don't.
So yeah, it's going to be a weird dynamic, I think. But Labour
Hmm.
looks like it's going to win.
For me, I'm not sure if the Tories will be last in the election, just because I'd have to see it to believe it type of thing. Because there's always going to be the diehards who will vote Tory. I think that the big question is not so much who's going to win. I agree with you on this. Labour's going to win. It's just going to be how big of a majority. One thing that's being talked about actually is that Labour are concerned about voter apathy. Basically, people thinking, oh, it's a shoe-in for Labour, the Tories are out. So they either just don't bother voting because they think there's no point because Labour are going to win anyway, or people will think, I'm just going to vote for my favourite party so I can say I voted for them because I don't need to tactically vote to keep the Tories out. And there are so many marginal seats in the UK right now in relation to Tory MPs that could possibly lose to people like the Liberal Democrats, Labour, specifically Labour as well, that they're terrified that they can't pull off those marginal seats because of voter apathy. And that's why Labour have changed their campaign a bit to start saying you have to vote. You must vote Labour to keep the Tories out. So it's not even just vote, it's vote Labour specifically if you want to keep the Tories out, which isn't entirely true. There are tactical voting should be used in some constituencies. For example, in Jeremy Hunt's seat, the Liberal Democrats have a greater chance of getting the Tories out than Labour. But that's one thing I thought was interesting because we've heard over and over again the narrative, oh, there's going to be a huge majority, but we haven't really taken into account other factors that come in elections like voter apathy, people just not bothering to vote. Only half the people bother to vote. On average, only half the people in the country who are eligible to vote actually vote. We normally don't have high voter turnout, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and just with how the system works as well.
Mm.
So some votes will be deemed not invalid, but how do you call it? They will not count because of how the majority system works
Mm-hmm.
with the seats, and also we need to take account the fact that many people nowadays feel like voting is meaningless and they will abstain from voting. I
Mm.
know in Greece, for example, the previous elections we had 60% people not voting. And even in the European elections, the percentages were also quite high. I mean, the
Mm.
percentage of people that didn't vote. So, yes, the prediction says that Labour will probably win, but at the same time, we need to account for the people that won't vote because there are people that have a certain agenda. Not agenda. There are people that have a certain like inclination towards one party or another, but we don't know if all of those people are going to vote.
Mm.
But what I will say for anyone listening out there, it's an obligation to go and vote because that's the
Yeah.
only way you can change anything. And
Mm-hmm.
also, it's one of your duties as a citizen. And on the other hand, if you don't vote, well, really, you also don't have a right to complain if
Mm.
the current government is fucking you over.
Yeah.
Because if you want things to change, you need to vote. If you don't vote, you're pretty much sitting idle saying, okay, whatever happens, happens. But at the same time, you're also giving your right to complain because if you want things to be different, then you should have voted.
Mm.
But that's the harsh reality, really.
Yeah.
You cannot ask for change on the one hand, complaining that it's all the same, but on the other hand, when you have the means to sort of do the change, you
Mm.
don't use them.
No, I fully agree. Absolutely. I think that one thing I'm expecting to see as well, just to add in here, I'm wondering if we're going to see an increase in young people voting, specifically because of this national service from the Tories. And I wonder if the Tories just want to lose this election because that was a suicidal one to do. But not to go too much into too much, and not to go into too much detail about it, because I want to focus on the voting patterns. If we see tactical voting from young people to try and keep the Tories out, they won't all go to Labour. They will just go to the party that has the second highest majority that stands the best chance of getting them out. So I think the like I said before, the only thing that we could see that varies from the narrative is how big Labour's majority is. I wonder if it will be a smaller one. Right now, it's predicted they're going to have a majority of 194 seats, but I think this is going to be just a fascinating election. The other thing I'm interested in as well is, as you said, with reform, I'm interested to genuinely see how well reform do. I think they're going to get some MPs. I think the big question is, do you think Nigel Farage will win this election?
No, and I think he doesn't aim to win the elections. I think
Mm,
he's sort of trying to play a game in the long run. So I think he aims
mm,
to win the next elections. And it's a good strategy,
mm,
really, because think about it. We have the
mm.
Tories in power for the last 14 years, and the last, I think, is it 14?
Yeah, about
Okay, and the last 3 to 4 years, they completely shut the bed because it got so bad. It started with Brexit. Then we had, yes, so we
that.
had Theresa May, which pretty much was jerking herself off in negotiations. A lot of back and
That's one
forth.
way of putting it.
Yeah. Then Boris Johnson came into to power. And then COVID hit, so negotiations stopped. I don't know what the fuck happened with the Brexit negotiations because we had the COVID.
Mm,
He also shut the bed with how he handled the COVID thing because we had the party in number 13. Basically,
Number 10.
number 10. Thank you.
Mm,
Yes. It's yeah, we've analyzed all that plus all the other shit he did. It got so
mm,
bad he had to step down, and now we have Sunak,
mm-hmm.
which, well, we all know what happened afterwards.
Well,
So
there was Liz
now,
Truss before Sunak.
oh yes, you're absolutely
Everyone
right.
forgets about her.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, imagine how
Mm,
catastrophic that was for sure, everyone. Anyways. So we have a failure upon failure upon failure, and the last 4 years being the failure of failures. So now it's Labour's turn because everyone will, look to Labour.
mm,
And of course, Labour, they may be different, but in reality, we all know they're not any better.
mm,
So, Labour will come into power. For us, at this point, will gain enough seats just to be in the parliament and hold his role as an opposition,
mm,
which, I mean, from debates, I can already see he can make an excellent job as an opposition. He knows
mm.
what to say and where to say it, and he
Yeah.
doesn't tend to speak much. He will say what he wants to say in few words,
Mm,
in a snappy fashion, which is excellent to keep people's attention. And regardless of what he says, the way he says it is enough to convince a few people out there thinking, okay, he's the one. Because at the end of the day, he also has presence when he speaks.
mm,
Again, I hate to admit it, but in the debates at least, he sounds like the most reasonable guy, which honestly
mm,
makes me depressed to say this.
mhm,
So yeah, then after establishing some sort of confidence while being in a position, because he has a talent which he displays as being part of opposition, then he will aim to for presidency because at that point you will already have two failed iterations of two different governments because yes, the last 14 years we had Tories, and the last 3 years have been an absolute failure for Tories.
mm.
But Labour will have to deal with whatever mess the Tories left,
Yeah.
and they're gonna do some more by themselves. So it's going to be a shit show regardless. And people are already fed up with the current establishment, anyways, and they're already looking into alternative solutions. And this is not something that happens in the UK only. It's something that happens in at a global level. We have Trump rising, who is anti-establishment in America after Biden's failure. We have a lot of people turning to far right parties in countries like Germany or even
Mm.
Greece and France as well, because they're tired of the current agenda and they're trying to, something different that might prove to be
Mm.
actually useful.
Yeah.
So there is change happening, and all of that, accounting also the instability that happens at societal level, economic level, due to the different wars that's happening,
Mm.
people will realize, okay, we have tried labor, we have tried the Tories, maybe it's something, maybe we need something else. And
And
what is this
reform.
something else? At the moment is Farage. In the meantime, in these
Mm.
4 years, there might be a new, party that
Mm.
comes up,
It wouldn't
that
surprise me
might
with Farage.
gain traction. Yeah, it might be from for us, it might be for someone else. I'm just saying that the you said that these elections are going to be interesting. I'm going to say the next elections are going to be more interesting because
Mm.
I predict even though Labour will win, they will shit the bed, and the next elections is going to be a case where people will have run out of options. People will not want the Tories at all. They will not want Labour at all. So they're gonna try to uh, vote an alternative option from these two. Now, I'm not sure that everyone's going to do that, but there's going to be a lot of people who will try to do that.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, after a certain point, when you have two ruling parties or two ruling ideologies, and you try them both for a period of like 30 years plus, and you see that it gets you nowhere, at some point you will start looking, okay, I don't care what it is, I just want a new other option because this isn't working.
Mm.
This has started happening in Greece. It has started happening in Germany. It has started happening, as I said, globally in various countries. And I think the UK is going to be next, either on these elections, probably not on these elections, but most likely on the next ones. That's my take on
Mm.
it. So to read after this long answer, to just reiterate, I think
Mm.
for these elections, Labour seems, well, will probably win.
Mm. I think it's likely that Farage will get his seat. I can see a good chance of him winning it, and if he was ever going to do it, if he ever had a chance of doing it, it was this election. And I can only imagine how he's going to be in Parliament. As you say, he knows how to talk to people. He can pick up on frustrations of everybody, and he can basically be a soundbox of like the idea of the opposition just say no and offer outlandish radical ideas that might not be sustainable. He'll be able to do that, especially from within the parliamentary debating chamber. And if he does become an MP, we'll see a lot more of him. And it'll be if George Galloway can hang on to his seat, it'll be an interesting parliament with Farage and Galloway both in it. But I think, like I said, as I was saying, yeah, it's a given Labour's going to win. As for Labour winning, do you think Starmer might have to end up resigning the way Johnson did because he won't be able to fix anything?
No, no,
Mm.
because the current leaders are power hungry.
Yeah.
Like, Boris Johnson didn't resign, he was forced to resign. And even after he resigned, he stayed like 2 or 3 weeks on his office. They had to practically kick him out.
Mm.
So I think it's going to be the same case with Labour, and it's going to be the same sort of finger pointing we see on the debates. So yes, you're going to see a lot of stuff crumbling. You're going to see a lot of stuff not working, and their defense will be, well, it's only been 2 years after we took over from Tories. We did
Mm.
this. We fixed the inflation by 2% minus. We fixed the economy where we saw a rise of 1% on our national GDP. We cut the national insurance tax by 0.5%. We also helped the NHS by reducing the queues by X amount of thousands. So, and as for all the other stuff that go wrong, that's because of the Tories policies, which we didn't have the chance to deal with because it's been so little time. Hence, I would like everyone to stand behind me and trust us for the future in order to make this into a better country for everyone. That's pretty much their position. See, I
Mm.
mean, I should quit my job. Should start write like freaking speeches for the politicians. I'm already uh, doing it quite excellent, as you can see. But really, that's going to be the argument. Oh, it's not our
Mm.
fault. Labor fucked it, and we just had to pick it up. Which
Yeah.
they can help them delay any sort of accountability by at least another 2 years. So 2 plus 2 equals 4, and that is another 4 year cycle finished. And it's going to be like, oh, we spent the last 4 years tidying up the mess that the Tories left,
Mm.
and because Tories has been in power for 14 years, and it's we have been in power for only 4, but and it's an excellent argument from the one hand, but on the other hand, like yeah, it's also going to be used as a leeway to keep whoever's in power,
Mm.
unless they do something completely stupid, like having a party on a lockdown level of stupid,
Mm.
or dictating that the national service should be mandatory for everyone type of stupid.
Mm.
Which I'm not saying that there's a 0% of happening. Like I'm saying that it's possible to happen, even though it's unlikely. I'm not saying that they're gonna do these things. I'm saying they're gonna do something equally stupid with these things. I'm not sure
Mm.
what it will be or in which area, but I think it will happen.
Mm.
Maybe not on the first year, but on the second year, they're gonna do something stupid. Now, depending on how serious this stupid thing is, we might see Starmer resigning, or they might just cover it and shove it under the rug with one way or another, or we might
Mm.
even get a new pandemic. Who knows? A new lockdown. This because the first one was quite popular in distracting people.
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah, there are options. So there are options for them. I mean,
Mm.
before they resort to resigning. Because do they even have a backup? A backup person to pick up in case Starmer resigns?
Angela Rayner.
Oh God, no, no. If that happens, yeah, I don't know. We are doomed. I mean, we are doomed anyways, but we are super doomed.
Next question about the election. Rishi Sunak. I don't know how true this is because in Rishi Sunak's constituency, you could run a fucking sheepdog with a blue ribbon and people will vote for it down there. Do you think Rishi Sunak might actually lose his seat?
Yes, yeah. And the reason why I say this is because even though his own party doesn't like him,
Mm.
I
He'll
don't
be
see how he could keep his seat.
he'll be the first sitting prime minister to ever lose his seat
Good.
in an election. He'll be the first one. Jo Swinson lost her seat during the last election. She wasn't prime minister though. She was just Liberal Party. She was a Liberal Democrat leader, but she was the one of the first. She was the first leader in my lifetime, I think, to lose her seat in an election because usually the leaders are given very safe constituencies where they're not going to lose in an election. And Sunak was given William Hague's constituency, which was one of the most safest seats in the UK for the Tories at the time. So that'll be
Yeah,
something if he loses that.
I hope he does because that will send a message that,
Mm.
incompetence should come with consequences. Because, fuck, man, the amount of shit he's done, the amount of shit he's said, not to mention all the other shit under the table, like the 0.4% tax, but fucking hell, it's ridiculous. Like, you
Mm.
cannot be that much incompetent, fucking and shitting the bed, wiping the floor with every single thing you say and do, and be expected to retain your position. Like, why the fuck are we paying that stupid idiot to be there and do fuck all? Because at the end of the day, we are paying them
Mm.
to govern this country, but they do the exact opposite of that.
Mm.
And we need at some point to draw a line. There's need to be like a threshold where if you underperform or if you that much incompetent, you need to be kicked out.
Mm.
That's how I see it, at least.
True.
So I hope he loses his position. I want him
Mm.
to lose his position,
Same.
but
It will be funny.
because of my strong opinions on the matter, I cannot comment objectively and predict whether he will actually lose his position or not.
Mm.
Because if some people want, to vote the Tories and they have no other option but to vote Sunak, I think they will vote Sunak.
Mm.
Which sucks, but yeah. But I just hope he loses his position.
Yeah. I'll tell you who I also hope lose their seats, aside from most of the Tories. Penny Mordaunt, I hope she loses her seat. She could potentially lose it. Grant Shapps could potentially lose it. Also of Labour, Jess Phillips could potentially lose hers. So I hope they lose their seats. I don't know whether they will, though. It would be funny if they did, but I'm not sure if they will. People seem to believe it. Certainly the news channels are trying like hell to, to actually orchestrate that by telling people, Sky News. I think we showed the footage of it in the previous episode. Sky News showed the footage of which parties to vote for to tactically vote them out, to tactically vote the Tories out. Overall, yeah, I think I agree. I definitely think Labour are going to win. I mean, that's a no-brainer. I'd be very surprised if the Tories somehow pulled this off. That would be the equivalent of the 1992 election between Kinnock and John Major, where people thought that Labour had it in the bag, and then it turns out that the exit polls were wrong and people voted in the Tories again. So I'll be very surprised if the Tories win this or come back from this. There is 1 week to go, but I'm not sure what can be done really to salvage it. I think the Tories now, as I say, are going for opposition, but yeah, I think Labour will win. The only question is, will they have a big majority, a medium one, or a small one? How well will Reform do? How well will the Greens do? How well will the Liberal Democrats do? Which Tory MPs will lose their seats? I think these are the questions. I think these are going to be the highlights of this election this year. But
Yeah, I say Labour might win, but I don't think it's gonna be by a big difference, like an
mm,
overwhelming win, which I guess it sort of contradicts what I said earlier to a degree.
mm,
But the reason why I'm saying this is even though in a majority from the people what we see in here is like a trend to Labour,
mm,
we also need to account for the fact that not all of these people are gonna get off their ass and vote.
true.
Because for some reason it feels, well, it seems to be like, oh, I'm gonna send a message to the government, I will not fucking vote. Where in actuality, when you do that, you do the opposite of sending a message. It's not rebellious to not vote, it's actually idiotic.
Mm,
So, yeah, we might see Labour going ahead just by a small margin, but
mm,
again, might also be completely wrong, and I'll be totally surprised if that's going to be the case. But
mm,
even in situations like this, when the population seems to be fed up with one party,
mm,
voting the other one and winning, even so, even in that case, is the degree in which the other party wins over the first one, even though people are
mm,
fed up, is usually small. And the reason for it is because not many people exercise the right to vote.
true.
So yeah, I would say, even I would go as far as to say there's like a 15 to 20% chance that the Tories might win. It's a small,
Mm,
but it's not 0%. There still is a chance that the Tories might win.
mm,
And that goes again back to the fact that not all people are going to go and vote. So I just hope for a change, at least that we have, no matter who wins, I just hope for a change that we have a big participation, which is not something the government wants, mind you.
mm,
But I just hope people will actually go and vote to begin with.
yeah, I agree. I think if anything's going to push young people to vote as well, because they're one of the worst groups for not voting. That is the ones that know if that know whether they're registered or not. I
I
would
know,
say
but you
that
need
mm,
to start somewhere. You need to
you
start
do,
somewhere and somehow.
but I think the National Service will push them to vote against the Tories. But that will lead to tactical voting because they'll look at who they're because the only control you have in the election, aside from voting for the party, is voting for your constituent MP. So they'll look at which party has a chance of knocking their Tory MP out or keeping their any opposition in, and they'll vote with that. So I think that the trend of tactical voting, because that's always been the trend of this one, Labour will have a big majority, and running alongside that, tactically vote to get individual Tory MPs out. And I wonder how that we've already gone through it, but I do wonder how that's going to play out. What we'll see more of dedicated voting for Labour or tactical voting, which will reduce their majority by quite a bit. It's going to be an interesting week. Like I said, we won't be able to actually be there because of personal circumstances for both of us. We will do an episode though after the polling. I don't really have much to say left, really, aside from what we've already said. Is there anything else you want to add in, Jim?
Yeah, something on the back of tactical voting. I don't think tactical voting should be a thing. I think we should always vote tactically. Like, and the fact that you mention it and there's a term for it, means
Mm.
that people vote unorganized. So if tactical voting is what it takes to fully take advantage of the system and its laws in order
Mm.
to elect what better represents you as a
Well,
collective, as a society, then
mm.
that should always be something that people should do. And they shouldn't do it only after they will fed up
Mm.
to a point where they have no other way of,
Well, the
fixing things.
mm, the idea of tactical voting is kind of a fuck you vote. If there's something specific that you don't like about a party, or a single policy you don't like, or in this case, people just want the Tories out at all costs, tactical voting is when you vote for a party that you don't support, but you've researched it and you know that even though you don't normally support that party, you know it's got the best chance of keeping the Tories out. You're defining your vote and utilizing your vote to keep the person you like out rather than supporting the person the party you hate out rather than supporting the party you want in. That's basically tactical voting. Just looking at what how your vote can contribute to removing someone rather than voting someone in.
Yeah, but imagine if you take it a step further and you organize it, then you'll be able to keep the party you want in
Mm,
and the party you don't want out.
yeah.
See, that's what I mean. It
Hmm.
all boils down to communication and
Yeah.
organization. But
Well,
at
let's be
least,
honest. I'm sorry.
yeah, but I'm just going to say that at least
Mm.
I'm at least happy that tactical voting is something that's being considered in this election and it's probably will be applied. So I'm happy at least for that.
Oh
That's
yeah.
definitely a step towards the right direction.
We're seeing it all across. Look at the Green Party gains that they got in the local councils with social media, Reddit forums, internet forums, anything. And by the way, I don't use Reddit for research. It's just a lot of people organize on Reddit. When you look at online forums, now got more opportunity than ever to basically organize voting blocks and tactically vote and create not even a party but a movement of voters. And this could be, you could put an individual at the top of this and just say, "Hey, we have a block full of voters. How are you going to appeal to us, and we'll vote you in." So we're going to see more of that, I think, in future elections as well. And I think this might be the early stages of it, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, I mean, hell, what was it? A few years ago, I think we even made an episode about it. They organized a whole freaking stock sale for the
Mm.
GameStop via Reddit, and
Yeah,
they
hedge fund.
almost pretty much crumbled, and some of the billionaires actually lost money. It got
Hmm.
so bad the app had to ban sales on that particular stock.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Happened with
you can
more
totally.
Walmart and all kinds.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, we can organize shit via Reddit and other social platforms. The problem would be, to gain enough traction because that's the other discussion, like a bit of a history lesson. Democracy that was invented in Greece, the only reason why democracy was working, quote unquote working, because don't get me wrong, even in ancient Greece, there was issues like corruption and stuff like that. So the only reason why democracy worked, it was because it was something that was named as direct democracy, which involved all 200 people, because that's how many people there were, give or take, about 200 people. They would all meet up in the city center and they would vote on different laws by the show of hand. Of course,
Mm.
now, like, yeah, 2 to 3 thousand, okay, 2,500 years later, over the period of time that wouldn't be possible because of how many people you have. But today, with the technology which we possess, we could very well host direct voting. You can use your phone to vote on important matters. Of course, this is not something that the government would want to do because, you know, it will give voice and power to the people, which they don't want to. But even so, that doesn't mean that you should sit idle. You should exercise whatever right is given to you to voice your opinion. And yeah, if what it takes is to communicate with one another and act collectively as a whole, which is a good thing, then maybe we should start doing it,
Mm.
because what's been happening is the lines between what's left and what's right and what's extreme and what isn't extreme have begun to being blurred out when it comes to like powers. So I think that's a good indication that we do need change, and the only way we can bring change is if we work together.
Mm. Yeah, I fully agree. I do, though, think that, well, I somewhat agree. I do think that you need voting should always be anonymous, just so. But in terms of you have the right to vote anonymously without anyone realizing who you vote for. So you're free from intimidation. But in principle, yeah. Beyond that, of course, what you were talking about there though was in the Greek parliamentary system, the Greek politicians themselves would have to show what they were voting for, right?
Yep. I
Yeah,
mean,
they have.
even today, when
They
the
do.
politicians speak and
They,
vote, this is being televised.
yeah, and you can look up voting records for any British politician.
Indeed, but you don't have any power over it. So, for example,
Oh
if
no, that's right.
tomorrow they decide that they want to legalize the death penalty in Greece, then you, as a civilian, have no power or say over it.
Yeah, yeah, I can see where you're coming from. On that note, I don't really have much more to add. Is there anything else you want to add in, Jim, to the podcast?
No, I pretty much said everything I want to say. Just a reminder on whoever is listening to this, please
Mm-hmm.
vote. Please vote. It's important to exercise your right to vote, even if it seems like meaningless. It's one of your rights, and if you don't exercise it, nothing will ever change.
True. And if you haven't got your voting ID sorted out, I don't know if you still can, but if you haven't got your voting ID sorted out, look at what you can bring to vote and get it sorted now. Otherwise, they will not let you vote without adequate ID. So now really is the time. And on that, Jim, I think we should call it. This was the i5 Circus of Fools series covering the election. The next one will be after the election, so we will see you guys on the other side. See you
Yeah,
later.
yeah. See you later. Bye bye.
Bye, guys.